Pike Night, the Strange New Worlds podcast where your calls are the prime directive. I'm your host, John T. Bolds, and I'm here tonight with the woman who has gone where no woman has gone before, the head prop master for a Star Trek show. Joining me today is my co-host, a man who, between his Jaws gas cylinder and his Evil Dead 2 chainsaw hand, is having a tough time using a keyboard. Host of Green Shirt and Newbie's Trek Through the Next Generation, Cameron Harrison.
You won't keep me down with 3 barrels. Not with 3 barrels, you won't.
And unfortunately, our co-host Jesse couldn't be here. He mistook a self-sealing stem bolt for a finger trap, and somehow it worked. But as I said, we have an amazing guest joining us on stage who has possibly the most fun off-screen job in television, prop master, the Toymaker, the Santa Claus, really, for Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Emily Hyde, welcome to Open Pike Night.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you.
We also call it propsologist.
Propsologist. That's a good one.
Propsologist.
Propsologist. I like it.
I mean, I was wondering, like, prop master, any job title that has master in it is pretty cool. Pretty cool.
There was conversation within the community to actually change it to like prop supervisor or something like that. And I was like, that's a hard no. It's a hard no.
Yeah, historical connotations notwithstanding, it just sounds awesome.
Yeah. Although I was going to ask, I mean, do you prefer prop mistress? Because we can use that.
Yeah.
It kind of depends on my mood, to be honest. Sometimes I'm a props master and sometimes I'm a props mistress. Kind of can go both ways.
Fair enough. Well, we have some great callers tonight who we're excited to hear.
Depends if you're designing a Klingon whip or not. Is that the mood?
That's a true story. Yes. Whether it's real or in fiction.
Heck yeah. Our callers were excited to hear tonight. We're having you as a guest, and we've got some of them lined up. So let's go ahead and hear first from our good friend, Abby.
Hey, Open Pike and Emily. Abby Summer from the First Flight podcast here. First of all, Emily, thank you for all the work that you do. I really appreciate all the creatives that are on a TV set that don't get a lot of the props, intentional pun there, for what they do that makes the world feel lived in. So I really do appreciate that you do all the hard work that people tend to gloss over for the bigger, flashier things. My question is, can you tell me a little bit about what got you interested in this and how did you decide that this was a career path that was going to be something for you? And what do you hope to do next with this? Is there a ladder of prop master growth that you go on? Or is this something that you hope to just continue doing in different genres and different TV shows for the rest of your career? I hope that this finds all of you and yours well, and we'll talk soon.
All right. That is a large question that I will happily answer.
Excellent.
So funny enough, I was actually drafted into the industry. I say that lovingly. My father was a construction coordinator and my stepmother was a key scenic painter. And when I was 16, my dad told me that I was no longer going to go to like camp and be a counselor, that I was going to come work for him. So I started as a paint shop laborer when I was 16. And I was actually at the time kind of training under my stepmother to learn how to be key scenic. So I actually worked within the paint department for on and off for 9 years, actually. I really loved what we can do to scenery, the different effects that we can do, and all those really like, I love getting my hands dirty. I still do as a prop master. Funny enough, I don't actually let a lot of people paint my props still and age them. I do a lot of that stuff still myself, like books and anything that's like really specific, I'll still do and use those skills. But that's kind of how I started. In terms of props, for a long time, worked on the Saw series. And I knew the props team well. Funny enough, Maria Morera and Jim Murray, who also have done Star Treks, were on Saw, and they used to let me into their lockup and ask. I got to ask questions, and I was really curious, so I got to learn a lot there. And ultimately, my step into props was by accident. I got a union call. And for a movie of the week called Wild Girl, I had no right taking this job because I had no idea, but I was certainly keen and I was certainly eager. And I learned real fast because there's no other option. It was a small show. There was only 2 of us on the floor. And ultimately, I can tell you the moment that I realized that I wanted to pivot from paint into props was I was standing on the back of my tailgate in a quarry at 2 o'clock in the morning. I was painting using caulking on a piece of foam to create a stunt rock because we didn't have the funds to hire a vendor to do it. And I was using my paint skills to make this for set. And I just remember like literally like the light coming on of like how much I was enjoying this and how much I wanted to like continue doing this. And so after that, I just, any call that I could take, I would show up and I'd be like, hi, I'm here. Tell me what to do. What can I do? And I would just ask all the questions, stand next to all the props people, and continue to just learn and absorb. And I think that's a big thing in our industry is like showing up, being present, and wanting to be in the mix is like half the battle. And in terms of, now being where I am, obviously Star Trek was a really big deal for me. I didn't think this would be a world that I would even get a chance to step my toe into. And I have loved every minute of it. Um, and in terms of going forward, I think the big thing is like the Prop Masters Guild now exists. And
Oh,
so um, this last year was the second annual like prop master awards, so I get to submit every year for my work depending on what category I get to go into, so I get further exposure with what work I do within the community within like the states, and here in Canada, which I think is really important because there's different ways that we all do things and it's a really great way to get it out there. um, and I mean, my biggest thing is I've done really large television series, and I would really like the opportunity to see what it is to work on a feature film.
okay.
Um,
Do you ever try to sneak in rusty bear traps or other saw-like booby traps into
oh my
strange new
God.
worlds?
There's been the odd, like, weird small thing that I've been able to utilize, but not so far.
No. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a great background to your relationship with props. When you started getting more into it, is there a prop from like your childhood, something you remember seeing like, oh, I want that. I want, I wish I could have either made that or as you got more into the creation of it, you thought that's a cool prop. That's a good one.
Well, funny enough, the Grail Diary from
Oh,
Indiana
nice.
Jones.
Not funny
Um,
at all. 100%.
That's a great choice. Yeah.
It's there's so much there if you like really have looked at it. The attention to detail that is in that diary, the ticket stubs, the notes, like everything that is done in that prop is literally like exactly what we should do. That there's not a beat miss, that anything that could be in there was put in there, was aged, was printed on the right paper. um, it's one of those things that make us stand out is like thinking about all the different elements that you can put into something. And I think that prop is something to look out for. Because even before I liked props or knew that I wanted props, I always thought that that diary was really cool.
That's
Yeah.
a great choice.
It's like
Yeah.
a person's lifetime of work put into one prop that, I mean, you don't see all of, but you see a
Yeah.
lot of. So every
You get-
page
you
has
get
to
s-
be,
yeah.
And there's a lot of comparisons to that prop. Like I have done, Umbrella Academy, I had to do a diary for
Okay.
Hargreaves, and that was the reference that I was given. This had to look like he's had it over the years. He's done his
Oh,
drawings, he's made his notes. Like it is something that is constantly actually referred to.
that's
that's awesome.
excellent. I wrote this question down so I wouldn't have to remember it. What was your relationship with Star Trek?
Oh, so I was a really big TNG fan.
Excellent. Yeah.
My mom and I used to watch it together actually. And one of my stepdad's really good friends actually owned a comic book store in Sudbury. And I used to just like hang out if we were like visiting. And I remember I actually asked if I could buy, because I was like playing with him in the store. I actually had the full card collection.
Oh, nice.
PNG. I have no idea why I thought they were so interesting, but I absolutely did have the collection of cards. And further to that, my mom was a huge Jean-Luc Picard fan. Um, and we may or may not have gotten from the store a 6 foot cardboard cutout of
Nice.
Picard. We had like
Nice.
I grew up in like a large loft, like down in Parkdale, and so yeah, he used to stand in our living room, which was pretty funny.
I have a different life-size cardboard cutout of a bald character.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit more gnarly though.
A little bit,
A
a
little
A
little
little
bit.
bit. Yeah.
I want to say even more temperamental than
bit.
Picard.
Right. Not as many highbrow speeches from him, but
Yeah.
Yeah. I also did watch Voyager.
Okay.
And I was like a big fan of like, the Janeway and, her just the way she captained and all that. So I definitely did watch it. Did I know absolutely everything? No, but I certainly understood the world.
Excellent.
sounds like.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, we got another call here from our good buddy
Okay.
Zoe.
Open Pike Night. This is the USS Cinema, Zoe Richardson, Captain, Commanding, also host of Backlick Cinema, the podcast. And I'd like to offer a big hello to Emily. Hi, Prop Master, how are you doing? Prop Masters are the true unsung heroes of all of our sci-fi and fantasy settings. And designing for Strange New Worlds must present an interesting challenge because you want to design props for the modern audience without alienating fans of the original series. Some props, like the Hyperspray, looks new, while others, like the Tricorder, looks like updated versions of the original designs. So how do you decide when the props should look newer and when it's better to lean closer to the original series design styles? Another question I have is, when is an item a prop and when is it a costume? For example, Nurse Chapel wore a piece of jewelry given to her by Corbin. So would that piece of jewelry be considered a prop or a costume? Those are my questions, and that's my time. Have a wonderful day. Richardson out.
Well, thank you for those. I'm going to actually start with the props versus costume first.
Okay.
Um, just because I think it's actually is a wonderful gray area that not everyone can understand, and so much so that sometimes we also change what it can or cannot be. Um, so funny enough, the bracelet that was given to Chapel was done by costumes,
Hmm.
and originally it was a dialogue between Bernadette Croft and I, who's the costume designer. And a lot of the times it can be that way because sometimes something like that can be me, but other times it can be a costume piece because it's part of the look, something that she really wants to like dive into or get her teeth into part of the look. Specifically for that, she asked to make that bracelet. She wanted to do the little beading part of it because
Hmm.
ultimately the world that we see on the bracelet actually ends up being a Visifect element. If it had been asked to do something more practical, like have a little light or something in it, then I actually would have built it.
Okay.
And a lot of the time, I would say jewelry will land with costumes.
Hmm.
Um, I think we also see that Lon has a necklace, and Lon's necklace also came from costumes. And it's one of those things of like, it's usually just a dialogue that happens between us. Sometimes it can change though. Like the watch is something that props will normally do. About 90% of the time, props will do a watch, whereas costumes occasionally want something to like coordinate with an outfit or a look,
Hmm.
then they'll do it. But most of the time, we'll take over watches.
Interesting.
Yeah. I will say there's a lot of gray areas with how we interact. It's just like, props versus set deck. Chair that I'm sitting in right now is going to be set deck because it's part of the furniture.
Hmm.
Um, Whereas sometimes if there's a specific, like the mouse that I'm working with right now, if I'm working with it, there's a good chance that I might do it. because it's part of the action that the actor needs to do, and it's very specific. So if it's a specific action, usually I'll take it over, or I'll just replace what set deck is put in there because I've had a separate, very specific conversation with producers as to what that should be or how that should function.
Oh, okay.
But like the books behind you, that would be set deck?
That would be set deck unless I, the actor, pulled that book out and started working with it, then it becomes a prop and it's me.
That was
So,
going to be my question. Like, how does improvising kind of affect all that? Because I'm also fascinated by this like interplay between departments.
so sometimes if this is like a book that's on camera, dressed behind us, then part of it should be clear. So you can see like the cover or the spine, but you can't necessarily see the text inside.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's already been prepped, then sure, they can pull it out. But if they're opening the pages, we won't be able to shoot the pages because they might not be anything it might just be an encyclopedia that we've put a new cover and label onto.
Yeah.
So it is always a bit of a cheat. But yeah, a lot of the time, same thing, like I'll work with the decorator being like, okay, if you're going to do this, I'll do this, where it's like, they'll do the dressing of the books. And then if there's a specific pile that an actor picks up, then I'll take care of the books.
I was thinking like Peleus Quarters specifically seemed to be a very big kind of interplay between set decoration and props that actors actually handle.
Yeah, so if we think about season 3 and everything that like got picked up in those crates and that Mbenga and Ortegas were going through, like the roller skates were my idea. We wanted to make a little note, speaking of like trying to bury things in the background of like having a little nod to different elements. We actually put in a yellow taxi cab to note Carol's background of Taxi. And then like I've sourced all of those phones that they pulled out. One of which like was the cool pink phone that we see on the bridge. We actually really liked it, but I was like, this isn't kind of cool enough. So we actually painted it very specifically for the episode in bubblegum pink.
Love it.
That's cool.
And then Bill Wolkoff, I think it was, said he had a lot of very awkward conversations about what phones looked most like a personal massager. Were you part of those very formal business discussions?
Yes, there's definitely dialogue about that, and how we could make things look in certain ways, for sure. Yeah.
That's great.
Originally, I don't know, because sometimes the way like I read a script versus like, how the writers intend it, I actually missed the joke to begin with. Because I just was like, oh, here, like, I was like functioning. I'm like, here's the phone, here's this is what we need to. And I was just thinking about all of the elements. I wasn't even thinking about like the joke until later on, where I was like, oh, yeah, okay, yep, absolutely. And then like got a couple added options.
Please tell me you realized that like in the middle of the meeting and suddenly you just went, oh.
I will not confirm nor deny.
Thank you for allowing that to continue to live in my head.
Yes.
That way.
Look, I honestly worked on Killjoys for a few seasons, and a lot of Killjoys had different fetish props and different elements that were written in. And I like most interesting day of my life was literally like doing a prop show and tell. And we were asked to get these different forms of whips. And so we had a table full of whips with writers, and they were looking at everything, and some of them were very confused as to like why they looked one way or the other. And I was like, oh yeah, one of these are for pony play. And like the look on their face were like, they were like, didn't actually understand what I was mentioning. They were very confused. And I was like, thought it was very interesting considering that they wrote all of this dominatrix, and we were showing props and there was a lot of confusion. It was definitely an awkward moment explaining what pony play was to the renders.
Very educational day.
Yes, yeah. A very educational job in general. I learned a lot of different things.
I bet you do.
Yeah.
Because it's important to understand what I'm putting out there or how it works and how it functions.
Well, I don't think there was a lot of pony play in TOS, but
No.
Going back to that part of the question.
Sorry, yes, absolutely. I got sidetracked. My apologies.
Please. No. We were walking you down that path.
Yeah, it's fair. I followed eagerly. You have to. we always kind of have a bit of a crass sense of humor in the industry, so I apologize. Um,
No apologies needed. No.
but in terms of the first part of the question, it's something you have to. I think the thing that I look up is canon first.
Okay.
And I want to see what has been previously established. Has there been something established? Is there, an element that is there that I should be tying into or looking into? And if not, we kind of look at if it's a species thing and what would make sense. Because the best example I'm going to use is the Klingon tricorder.
Hmm.
Because again, I did my research. I looked it up and I was like, okay, the only time we've seen a Klingon tricorder was with Christopher Lloyd in Search for Spock.
Oh,
Only time.
okay.
Later on, I did find like fandom on the fact that there was some tricorders used. Um, I want to say in Deep Space Nine, but they weren't really like specific, and they were just like a pile of something, but for Klingon, but it wasn't anything that was like noted.
Hmm.
Um, so I was like, to me, that was an iconic look of what has been done and what has been established. And I was like, so if it's broke, don't fix it. Because it's like, for me, I want to pay respect to something that exists. The timeline wasn't too far off. It was like a 20-year difference. Technology isn't going to change that much. So, as far as I was concerned, I wanted to stay true to it. Obviously, the biggest challenge that I also have is respecting where technology exists now in 2025 versus when technology was then.
Mm-hmm.
So, we have to embrace the fact that there was no such thing as an iPhone
Yeah.
then, and there is an iPhone now where we can have playback. But for us, like for that particular prop, we change the shape of how we would see the screen and make sure it was kind of like odd and hexagonal that would kind of tie in with what we've seen for Klingon shaping, and put that together. So a lot of the time it's like that's where my head goes first. And if not, then we do want to look at what we see for technology on the bridge for Strange New Worlds, but also what we saw originally in TOS, and try and always kind of think about what those shapes were, what those details were, and try and, pay respect and homage to that rather than going too far and futuristic. Um, but with that said, if we're thinking about like a species and where that species is and how that species looks, then we're also going to pivot our looks and designs. Specifically, I can use the Gorn as an example,
Mm.
because for us, for the Gorn technology, as far as we could see, that they are advanced. Um, and their ability to kind of be so threatening and daunting, we wanted to make sure that the technology that we put forward for them also was as such that we didn't even know how necessarily it functioned. Um, so for me, for that, I wanted to kind of push that look to make it seem like, okay, do we even know where this comes from? Do we know how this functions? I have to say, I nerded out over the Gorn technology because we had never seen it before, other than their like helmets.
Mhm.
And so I really had a lot of fun playing with how their technology would be, what it would look like, taking samples from, funny enough, the VisFX asset of the ship
Mm-hmm.
and the console that we saw just in the VisFX asset. And we took elements of that and pushed it into our actual practical props for how those would look. So I think it's really just respecting. Oh God, it's just respecting the world that we operate in, and knowing and paying attention to care of like how those things should be presented.
Well, just talking about that fusion of old and new, I got to play with the like tricorder,
Hmm.
which so I didn't know how much I needed to hold the props until I think it was Vince got some out and let me hold them, and I was like, oh, this is not my 3D printed tricorder. Like this is as close as you're going to get to a real tricorder. Down to the working screens, which you said you use iPod Nanos for. I'm just
Yep.
curious where you find iPod Nanos for your props.
eBay.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah, you can find a bunch of vendors on eBay, and then we actually use, as I said, the original, I think fourth generation iPod Touch
Okay.
Okay.
as well. iPod Touches are basically, I would say, in any of our like smaller screens that we have. The Nano is obviously the smallest that we go. But the touch and any of like our smaller bezels is what we'll use. We also like to use Samsung tablets, like a Tab
Okay.
A, because they're about this big. So it fits nicely in the hand. I don't like anything tablet wise unless, scripted, because it just becomes cumbersome and the actors really don't like it. It's not helpful to them. The interesting thing about nanos, though, they're great, except for you can't cue them because the tech no longer exists to be able for them to be updated.
Uh-huh.
So they're great. They're small screens, but they can only play on a video loop, whereas the touch still is capable of having Bluetooth, and we can actually remote control what we see on the screen,
Oh, that's cool.
and do cues so that it's not just like a looped video, so we can do specific actions for the actors.
That's really cool. It's cool. You're using technology that was inspired by Star Trek technology to build your new Star Trek technology. That's pretty cool. Pretty
It's a
cool.
very good way to put it. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, we got another great call here. Here's our friend Melanie.
Hi guys, hi Emily, here's Melanie from Germany. Thinking of props and season 3, well, as some of you, well, most of you know, I am a huge Pike fan and I just love everything about him. His quarters, the ready room, and wherever he is. I think his quarters got an even nicer touch when Marie is with him, was with him. I like the shots showing both of their marks and other things next to each other, and her clothes all over his room. I love how he tried to clean up when he was a Vulcan, and all those little touches of stuff around are just exquisite. I would move into his room at a moment's notice. His style and the leaper in 4.5 Vulcans is also just amazing. See, the thing is, I love the amount of love he showed to the small details and everything. And the mandolin? That was Anson's, right? I also love the backpack that we see Pike use in Shuttle to Canfori, and I went to see if I could find a similar one. I ended up with something akin to the smaller one Uhura uses in another episode. It's perfect, thanks for that. So, how do you like to create, find, or invent props the actors use, and that will become a part of the Star Trek universe? Does it put you under a lot of pressure? I mean, the fancy stuff like phasers, communicators, and tricorders are already invented. What else did you come up with? Emily, thanks for being here and answering our questions. Live long and prosper to all of you. Melanie signing off.
So yeah, how do you approach designing a new prop, something like those backpacks they used?
Well, sometimes I will go off the costumes concept. I
Hmm.
find it's always like the good starter is to see what the look is going to be, how it's going to be, so that I kind of can follow suit. Whether it's like color or texture, is it going to be something, using Shuttle to Conforti as an example, they were both like supposed to be incognito. So
Mm.
we wanted to find something that was match their look, but also something that we wouldn't see as like Starfleet issue. And originally they both had two different looks, so we decided to make two different bags. Funny story though, ultimately we had problems with Mbanga's bag, and I'll tell you why. So we had some stock that existed, and we had some Filson backpacks. That are this really cool green. They're like water sealable, like really kind of cool looking. But the zipper was like really big and thick, and I didn't like it because like it's not easy to open. And the whole part of those backpacks were the fact that we had to open them to take out the canister to put the chimera flower in. So I actually sent them to a vendor, and I was like, okay, what can we do? And again, funny enough, those backpacks were something that particularly, like I said, was in stock, so it was going to save me a little bit of money. Truthfully, it was like to Conforti was a huge episode for us
I
in
bet.
terms of props. We had, I think, in the end, it was something like 22 builds alone just for that episode. Producers did not like my budget.
So does like a half-eaten leg fall under props in that case?
No, that was from prosthetics.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
Yeah. But, you know, I want to bring up the Chimera flower because that in the end was like a
Ah.
prop co-pro, and the different variations that we do. But yeah, the backpack. So there's something called fidlocks. They are a magnetic zipper or magnetic closings that you can
Mm-hmm.
use. So I actually had our vendor put fidlocks instead of a zipper so that it would open and close really easily, thinking that this would be helpful. However, come the day of shooting, I'm talking with Vince, my floor key, who's amazing, by the way. I can't say enough about how phenomenal he is in the moment. And just, he's great with the cast, and he's just great thinking on his feet. And, he's like, this is not staying together because of the weight of the canister and everything. It was pulling the fidlocks apart. And it was really annoying the cast because we couldn't get them to stay shut. So we actually ended up sewing the zipper closed. So for part of the action, so that it wouldn't keep opening on us. But it looked really cool. And we put I found these pouches from Hudson's Bay that we actually took in different angles and sewed them on, added leather. The vendor cursed me the whole time because turns out that material didn't want to adhere to anything. So we were on the struggle bus from the beginning. So what I thought was helping myself by save money and add on to something that exists, turns out cost me more money and more pain and more aggravation. But it looks cool.
Yes, it did.
And it looks cool. The backpack that we did for Pike, already, and that's something too, is I always want to try and find things that have interesting texture and pattern on them so that they're already doing part of the work and then I'm just changing elements out. We added 3D printed element to the front that had just again changed up the texture and the look. And then clips aren't the coolest thing, so we found something a little bit more modern and interesting to add, and then added some leather and different the flashlight holder and a couple things to the strap. So we modified the bag slightly to tell our story, but I mean that bag worked great. And exactly again, it was like a military backpack but also could be used as a camera backpack. So we same thing, changed the zipper out, but then also changed how the zipper functioned so it would completely clamshell open and we wouldn't have any of the struggles that we ended up having with Mbanga's bag. So that's kind of how things work sometimes, is trying to find a great base and build onto. But in terms of sometimes how we work in different ways, so the Chimera flower for that episode, I had to find a way to make it stand out, look threatening, look like it could be possibly Klingon, but also kind of beautiful. And I think we did about 6 different paint tests of what the coloration should be before we locked in on what they wanted it to be. And then we had to print enough to give to set deck to dress into the parts of the set. We then had to make our own hero versions that were prosthetics, that were soft, so they looked real when the actors touched them, and that had a magnetic base, so it looked like you could laser them off and pull. And then later on, we made a third prosthetic version that could actually be cut open so we could get the gunk from inside while we were back on the ship.
Okay.
So it's it was like a 3-ring circus of making sure that everybody had the flower, it was the right flower, and it did exactly what it needed to do.
That's cool. It's fun to hear just the depth that it goes to, and I want to talk more about that later with newer technologies. But like you mentioned, you have a great team. We got to meet them. We got to meet you and your team while we were up there visiting set. When you're working on an episode like Shuttle to Kenfor or any episode, does each person get handed some props and that's their baby, or do the props pass through everybody's hand, pretty much all the props as they're being made?
You mean from being made to getting to my team?
Yeah, well, being made to like design, to build, to paint, to finish, to aging, stuff like that. Does one person do one prop, or does your department work more? Is it broken down by specialty?
Line.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of a lot of what we do. It we send them out to vendors a lot of the time.
Oh, okay.
So I have Walter Claessens is my main builder here in Toronto. So essentially what I'll do is I'll work with my concept artist first here in house, and him and I will, meet every day. We'll go through the ideas of what this is supposed to be. He'll come up with concepts. We'll have a meeting and I'll be like, can we adjust this? Can we tweak this? This isn't working for me. Or we'll do color studies and look at, like, again, same thing, like, what is the costumes concept? How are we aligning the things together if need be? And then obviously I'll have my approval meetings with the producers and make sure that, they're happy, they get what they want. We'll always try and do like 2 to 3 variations because one is none. You always have to make sure to present options. A little props trick, actually, behind the scenes is there's always one option that we really don't like. But you always want to put it there so that they think that it already kind of pushes them to the ones that you want them to look at.
Right. Does it ever backfire and they pick that one?
Seldom. There's
Seldom,
occasionally it has happened, but most of the time it helps kind of like navigate where you're hoping to go. Because there's always like my favorites and the ones that I really feel strongly about. And sometimes I'll try and naturally push towards that. But yeah, then things go to our vendors. My team goes crazy with me because I have like 8,000 WhatsApp chats that we're all in. Vince is in them, so he can kind of keep track of what's happening, with the communication of how a build's going, what the build is going to do and how it's going to function. So if he's like, I don't know if this is going to work for set. And then, yeah, like with the vendor, they'll, do a test print. We'll talk about it. They'll show me videos. And then I'll be like, oh, that's interesting. What about this? Is this going to do this? And I'm able to kind of give notes along the way. And then basically, yeah, and then post that, it gets handed to my team. And in our WhatsApp chats, we also have a chat that's called build videos. So most of the time, the vendor will do a video of like, here's how the battery goes in. Here's where your dimmer switch is. Here's where your RC is. Here's the code for the RC. Because a lot of the time, too, all of our stuff is remote controlled by our electrics board. So we have to make sure that we're giving the right information to the board op so that they can actually test our lighting, turn our lighting on, and control it. So it's a it's a huge collaborative process sometimes to get our props working, which is awesome but infuriating all at the same time because I've learned a lot on Star Trek about how the electrics work. And how RCs work, how there's a transmitter, what channel's a transmitter on, and, is the right transmitter on the right unit because we usually have several units going at one time. So there's a lot.
I was going to ask, are you ever like, enough with all these flashing lights? I just want to work on a Western. Just give me a prop that doesn't need an RC.
I really should want to work on a Western. I think my husband would be way happier if I did, because I'd be way less stressed out. But no. I worked on suits for, I think, 6 years. I was really good at briefcases. I was really good at Scotch. I was really good at putting actors' lines in files. But I love building. I love creating. I love bringing something into reality that wasn't there before. Like I'm still get to gush all these years later, working on, the Umbrella Academy, and we needed to make a flamethrower. And well, originally it was supposed to be like, is she going to come down with a robot arm? But we couldn't afford robot arms. So it was like, producers were talking about using like 2 Tommy guns. And I was like, well, that's cool, but it's been done before. And so when she had robot arm, it was going to be shooting bullets and flame. So the flamethrower part of it, I was like, well, why don't we do a flamethrower? Because we haven't done that. And they're like, oh. And I was like, why don't we not just do any flamethrower, though? Let's do a 1944 World War One British military flame life buoy, because it looks like a life ring, and it was circular. And it was like, you've never seen a flamethrower like that since. And I was like, this is what we got to do. It's gonna be so cool. It's gonna go with Grace because she's like 1950s mom. And that came to life and became iconic. So I think I love I love being able to, do that. I love being able to think about what we can bring in, what can be different. And I have a tendency to want to like, if something could be good, but I can make it great, I'm I'm going to push myself that much further because that's what I want to do. And I just feel like on a Western, I would make some really cool holsters, maybe better than what I've done here. I will tell you truthfully, I can say I have struggled making a good holster. I can make an amazing pistol, phaser. I could do it, but I've been on the struggle bus with finding like a cool way to make like a dope holster. I don't know why, but I, I think finally, funny enough, for season 5, I've done it. But
We'll keep an eye out.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Here's our co-host who unfortunately couldn't make it today. Here is Jesse.
Hello to the callers and fine hosts of Open Pike Night. It is your third co-host, Jesse, and I'm sorry to have missed this episode, but I gotta go to work. I'm sure you all know how that is. But, Emily, I did not want to miss this opportunity to ask you kind of a specific Trekkie question about your work with the props on Strange New Worlds. So Star Trek is well known for having like very everyday items, spray painted black or covered with silver foil, and then placed into a scene as a new futuristic object. Would you say that that tradition continues on Strange New Worlds? And if it does, what's the balance of found objects that get modified and turned into props versus props that are made from scratch? Thank you again for all your hard work on the series. Cannot wait to hear this interview.
So, truthfully, I would say about 90% of what I do is from scratch builds. Um, I, if I need to, I will find something and utilize it, but a lot of the time, I would rather bring something new into the world. I can say that in, was it episode 308 with our Vulcans? It was like one of the first times where I was like, we were late into prep, and our amazing director, Jordan Canning, was like, I really want all of them to have more than weapons. She was like, I want them to have like tech with them. I want them to have cases. And I was like, okay. I had like under 10 days to like bring things into the world before filming. And I was like, okay, how can I do this? I'm already over budget, which is a common theme with me. But it's worth it for what we put on camera. And so I was like, okay, like, how can I do this? And I bring this up because this episode, I have a little bit of pride this time around of like what I brought into the universe, of like, how do I create tech and on a budget? So I think I told you when you're here visiting this story, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but I think it would be fun for the fans. So I really wanted, and please don't hate me for bringing up the alternative universe that is Star Wars. I apologize. I'm I like both, but I wanted to have my Star Wars ice cream maker moment. Um, and clearly, you know what I'm talking about.
That's such a
So
niche thing, but I love it.
Yes.
it is. I just like I've seen this, and I've really held on to like wanting to be able to like put that random prop in there that was something else that like you're like, really, is that what that is? So for the Vulcan tech, I used a speak and spell that I painted and 3D
Ah.
printed a plate onto over the keys with gems that stuck out and turned it into what I would call a Vulcan translator. And we actually put screws in the side and created a strap for it to, I think it was actually on a Hura. And then we also needed another piece of tech. And I was looking at speakers, but none of them were really big enough. They had these really great like shapes, but they were all
Hmm.
kind of like this big. And I just didn't think they were going to tell the story. So I actually found a CPAP machine because it was really like compact with this like perfect handle, and with covering the screen with some Romark and some resin buttons, um, you know, it absolutely told our story. And then we did actually make a couple bags. One that Spock wore that we were like, okay, is this like where the drawings, like what could be in here? And then we made a separate one that was kind of like a little smaller case that we were like, okay, is this a medical case for chapel? And then we bought some really cool pelican cases. Same thing, like we painted them, we added resin gems to them because I was like, this is going to tell our story. And, it's not often that I do that, but I think in this particular case, it really like did what it was supposed to do.
Did you nickname the one prop a Spock and spell?
Ooh, that's good.
I'm giving you that one. You can have that one for free.
Yeah, you have that for free. Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to take my Spock and spell. Yeah. Yeah. So other than that, a lot of the time I like to build from scratch if I can.
Okay. And building on that, with the last 20 years, like we've seen a complete revolution of desktop manufacturing, ease of 3D designing, printing, modeling, advancements in adhesives, paints, microcontrollers, and just the maker movement in general. What has been your favorite newer technology that would make TNG and Deep Space Nine and Voyager prop masters drool over what you could do today?
I mean, I think for them having, the remote controllers, like the microcontrollers, the RC controllers, you can do a lot with lighting. You can tell the story you want to tell by cues, by colors, by action. And I don't think this is giving anything away. We just recently did a prop in season 5 where, I had like a bar on the side and, intentionally I was like, okay, it can show the countdown. And then I was like looking at the photos and they actually changed like the top and bottom colors to like red and green. And then the center is like other colors. And it actually like told the story in a totally different way that I hadn't even imagined. And I think that's something important that would have really helped for, what we saw on TNG, where we have all those different elements that was like cutting away from that you're like, oh, it's like there's a solid light, but if it had been blinking, if it had been doing this, it would have helped the story along more. But I will not to like pivot on what I just said though, but I also, because I just had this happen to me where I was told that something I was offering up was like too simple. And it was like wasn't complex enough. It needed to be more interactive. And I really wanted to turn around and be like, fucking Data saved the ship by going like this with a bunch of plastic cards, right? Like, when did we leave from the plastic cards and the acrylic to then like this not being good enough? It was really like one of those like moments where I wanted like, do we remember where we came from and what we used to do to tell the story versus like, I think sometimes we overcomplicate it now. And the suspension of belief that we could have had in TNG versus now, like, I feel like we've been a little oversaturated with too much. From the person who does too much. I just have appreciation for some of these moments that were respected then versus now, where we sometimes, we really have to go down the rabbit hole. And I think it's not to credit of our audience. I think our audience will get it a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But
I think in general, entertainment it tends to, go too complex. It does things just because it can. Just because we can do this now, because we have the technology, because these are the types of stories we can tell. We've got to push it this far. I'm like, I don't know. Do you sometimes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think about the episode of the exocomp on TNG, and it's like, hey, this thing can fly around. Let's just have Data carry it everywhere. Like, hey, it still works.
I don't know about that one. But speaking of actors carrying things around, I was wondering, obviously when you're designing for camera. It's got to look good. It's got to look real. How much thought goes into making it feel real for the actors? Like, that's what I thought when I was picking up the props, like the phaser. I was like, this doesn't need to feel like a real gun to sell it, but it does. And that helps me make me think I'm holding a real phaser. Like, do you consider that a lot when you're designing?
yes, but not in the way you would think. It would actually be the opposite of what you just said.
Okay.
A lot of the time, things that are heavy for us will cause problems. The lighter they are, usually the better, especially if an actor's carrying it for a long time. a lot of our original props were made out of milled aluminum, which is what the phaser is and also what the tricorder is. And they are beautiful and phenomenal. But as soon as they get dropped on the ground, it's like, oh God, okay. Um, um, yeah. So a lot of the time, I've actually rebuilt props to be lighter. Like our pads and everything that we originally had were also milled aluminum. But over time, the way the aluminum was sitting on the tablet screen was actually causing havoc with the playback. And it was causing the playback to fritz and not be able to be cued, which was causing a lot of problems on set. So we actually rebuilt them out of like resin so that they were
Oh,
still like hard and looked the part, but were not A, as heavy, but B, they weren't causing problems with the playback of the tablet.
Interesting. Makes
Um,
sense, though.
but
yeah.
yeah, and the other thing too is like a big thing for me is like whether we're doing stunts as well. For me on this show, I'm incredibly lucky. We have an amazing mold shop, and a lot of our props, like pistols, phasers, rifles, I'll send to our mold makers to mold and cast them and make our stunt weapons in house. And like they'll even put like little LEDs in there, so not like controllable. We'll just have like a little watch battery in, but it still gives VisFX something to cue to.
Ah,
So it causes less work for them rather than not having any lights at all. And it has saved me because I then can focus on making the hero ones with our vendors and then our stunt ones in house, which is like they do a phenomenal job, and also it saves in costs for production too to be able to keep some things in house rather than sending out to a vendor.
makes sense. Very cool.
Yeah, I got in trouble this year because I worked on some different species rifles and I wanted them to be a stunt hero, which I should never do because it never works out. It always has bit me in the butt every time. And we had to like last minute send them to the mold shop and get them cast and get them painted. Like insanity. So always just have your hero one and have your stunt one separately. Have your one that's even softer for when you're going to hit somebody with, and you'll be good. Because if they say they're not going to do it, they're always going to do it.
Don't be a stunt hero, Emily.
Just based on hero.
Well, we did have first time callers open Pike Night when they heard you were coming on. So here is Val.
Hi, Open Pike Night. This is Val calling in with a question for Emily Hyde. I'm always amazed at the creativity that goes into making props. In season 3, my favorite prop was the one where Ortegas built the water condenser. As you know, that the props department had to not only make the final thing, but all fictional pieces that went into it. I was wondering if there was a particular prop that you thought was challenging or interesting to figure out how to make. Thanks.
That episode alone was like its own challenge for every prop that was there. Because, that water condenser, as she said, like we had to get pieces from set deck to know what looked like that was going to be within the shuttle. And then we had to print pieces separately to give to them, or the files to give to them to actually install so it looked like what we were using and what they had in there were exactly the same. And the other thing is the monocular. We had a plan for the monocular of like how Ortegas would put it together, and ultimately, as I said earlier, it was too convenient of like how we did it. So I was asked, or like, can we make it look rougher? So I like the pieces for those monoculars were so small. So I literally was like in my shop, like taking small copper wire, and I like wired all of the pieces together, thinking how this would be done by Ortegas, and did them here. And then we made sure to have all of that wire installed as well so that we could see in the montage of the action of like her putting it together so that she could practically do it as well. And the wonderful thing about Melissa is she's so tactile. Like she wants her hands on everything. She wants to understand the process. She wants to know the process. And I mean, I honestly respect her for it. That episode, she was so phenomenal. If I may, about like building things and how we do things. Um, that particular episode, does anybody remember Melissa eating the Gorn meat?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the most viscerally disgusting eating of disgusting food in a show I've ever seen.
So we worked with Legacy, who created all the innards and created the vent worms, and they built this piece that would have come out of the gut of the vent worm that we could then stick our meat into for Melissa to be able to eat from. And so again, we were like, okay, what does look good? So we made it out of seitan, which is like basically a almost gluten, if you will, but like a
Okay.
vegan gluten. And then we kind of also had like a vegan jelly on top of that that was like colored with beet and cherry. And the whole note that we got about when she eats this is they wanted the goo to be like pouring out of her mouth, but it couldn't be one color. They wanted it to be several colors. So it was just like, how are we going to do this? And we did a test. We wanted to make sure Melissa could try it ahead of time. And part of our job is to make unpleasant things pleasant. So the yellow goo was mango. The green goo originally was pistachio until I freaked out because I was like, we can't have any form of nuts on set due to allergies. So we ultimately changed, I think, the flavor to like apple or something for the green glue, and gave her this piece to test to bite into. um, Thinking that we were being helpful by making it taste like fruit. Melissa hates fruit. She really does not like it. And I was like, oh shit. I was like, okay, we'll change this. Like, we'll figure something out. She's like, no, leave it the same. It will help. And the piece in the end, I thought we were like going to shove something in the side of the prosthetic piece from Legacy. And then on the day, it was kind of like this valve that came up that we had to kind of put our piece into, which the seat and the way it was basically we put two pieces together and then put this like vegan jelly around it. And it kind of like smushed the pieces apart. So we kind of like, when she held it, we had to cheat it. And when she bit into it and all of the goo and everything, she absolutely retched on set, and everybody was like super concerned that she was going to be ill and what was going to happen. But ultimately, it just helped her sell that performance even that much more. So, um, yeah, it worked out really well. But that's kind of how we work on things. Is like figuring out those small beats and those details of the best way to put it together. And sometimes the accidents are our friends too. And then in terms of any other technology for that particular episode, I would say the biggest issue for us was actually the thruster.
Okay.
Because something that large, we don't usually do. So we actually worked with Set Deck to help build it because of the size. But then originally it was scripted that there was like wires running from the thruster to was like the remote control, which again we had to figure out what that remote control would be. And I actually was very adamant about there not being wires between Starfleet Tech and Gorn Tech, because we only work with wires in so many, like in the innards of the ship, and not a lot of the time with like small objects. And I really didn't want to move into that language. And furthermore, with the Gorn technology, I really also wanted nothing to do with wires, because a lot of what I wanted to tell was how the crystals worked. Especially using the goo that you see so much in season 3 with Gorn. I wanted to suggest it could be connective. Sorry, not connective, conductive.
Oh, okay.
And what that goo can do with the crystals and how the crystals interacted and how they could send signals and so on and so forth. I like really wanted to play with that, and I was really wanted to try and figure that out. So it was just like, okay, SetDeck built this like thing for us, but I was like, okay, we need to bring an insert. And I was like, we need to take the center spire from the comms array, and we need to be able to stick it in, but then that's not working, so we have to take a crystal out of the center of it and then shove it into the Gorn shield that was like the hand shield, and then press a button, and then that, like, those two things were all going to work together to make this thing go off. It was like inventing technology of like, this doesn't work, so then this is going to work. And then ultimately we almost saw barely any of it, but it was an absolutely beautiful prop that I, spent a lot of time figuring out how are we going to remote control it and what it was going to look like.
Do you know the rules of the Gorn board game?
Yes and no. I will. Trying to figure that out was very difficult. I'm not going to lie. The board game alone was like my brainchild of like where this would come from, and the fact that we had to use what was present, right? And the Gorn had been marooned on this planet. So for me, it made sense that we were actually taking the skin of the vent worm and using that as a board, and that given the Gorn have such nice talons, that use their talons on top of the natural curvatures of the skin would make this board game. And the idea, at least, was that, and this is going like way into how I think about things, is that Gorn herd to eat. And the whole idea, right, is on season 1, when we see the flashbacks of Lon, they're in the maze of that planet and they're basically being hunted. And so for the game, I wanted it to actually resonate like that. That even though this is a relationship and a friendship, you kind of can't also help the nature of the creature. And that the idea of the game was to like basically hunt and herd to get to the center to be able to capture the food, which was capture the center part. Was ultimately like where my brain was, because I wanted to like tie into, what we've kind of seen with that species before. Not that anyone would know that until this very moment.
I love it.
That's great.
And that was the other thing too, is like the shape that she eats in the end. We actually also shaped after one of the Gorn cruisers as well.
Okay. Okay.
And then the idea of like the other pieces that we saw were like etched bone that we would have gotten from the vent worms over time that she created. And that same thing, we had markings on them to match what we see on the walls too. So that game was, though loose in terms of like how we played it, definitely had a lot of thought behind it. And clearly some more thought needs to go into the rules for people to play.
Before Hasbro buys the license and releases a home version.
Yeah. I don't know how well ventworm skin would go over for 5-year-olds, but
Mine would love it.
We can make an ad for it at least. See how people react. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we do need to start wrapping up, but we can't end a conversation on season 3 without asking about, and I don't know if the Final Frontier had any prop work in it, and the murder mystery. What can you tell us about doing props for those segments?
The murder mystery was fun because I got to go into my kit of 1960s. Definitely, funny enough, a lot of like the hand props that we use were from my kit, because on Umbrella Academy we did a lot of 1960s and 1970s work. So, had a lot of fun going through our lighters and what we could see for, Celia. But I also spent a lot of time looking for vintage elements too, that would work for Celia, constantly trying to find the lighter that would light her cigarette. Also glasses. Same thing, like I have a huge glasses kit. I got to go through all of the good ones. I had these like 1970s Dior frames that I'm like so in love with that I was like, okay, these are going to be perfect for Celia. And in the end, they were like too small for her face. And I was like, no. But yeah, so a lot of fun smalls that we got to do for that.
So as a prop master, you have a kit that you just have like I'm imagining you like walking to the meeting with a trench coat and opening it up and being like, which lighter would you like? Or
yes.
Yes. Actually, speaking of the Final Frontier, I'm wearing our camera shirt from this year.
Excellent.
But yeah, I have a 40-foot trailer.
Okay.
Um, full of different things. So I'll have a bin of flasks and lighters. I own a proper restaurant fridge with like double sliding doors, because the amount of food that we do.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so I have quite a large stock. So it's the idea of a kit is that when you're like not expecting something and you're like, "Hey, Emily, I was wondering, like, could we be playing chess right now while drinking wine and having a charcuterie board? I know it's 11:30 at night, but could you do that for us?" And the answer is yes, because I have a bin of games and I have, usually like call it like the emergency bin of glassware, like four
Mm.
wine glasses, four champagne glasses, tall, um, shot glasses. And basically that's our as my shirt says, it's the props pocket. It's
Hmm.
imaginary things that we can pull out of nowhere in the middle of the night. That's what a prop kit is for.
I love it. I don't know why that tickles me. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's we call it the props closet because there are asks that we get asked on a day-to-day basis that there is no world or rhyme or reason we should be asked for that. We couldn't have even thought to have planned for that. And someone has an idea and they're like, we were just wondering. And you're like, um, standby caller. And,
It's great.
sometimes we can make it work. A lot of the time we can, or we'll offer something else up. But yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So, what about lost objects? We talked about, stuff you find to turn into props. How do you deal with actors who fall in love with and want to, say, adopt a prop and not hand it back to you?
It depends. Uh, it the problem is these days is that so much of what we do are assets.
Hmm.
And they're assets to the company and they're assets to the studio. So it comes down to money. I don't know if I should mention what a phaser costs here, but a standard issue phaser on Strange New Worlds costs $13,000.
Wow.
That's more than I'd expect.
Wow.
So letting $13,000 just out the door, usually there's feelings.
Hmm.
Um, there's some feelings about that. So a lot of the time we have to get network approval. But if it's something smaller, say, I really like that badge you made for us. Would it be
Mm.
possible if I could keep it? A lot of the time, something smaller, just if
Yeah.
it just happens to fall off. But something that I'm trying to do for wrap for this year is, there has obviously been conversations about phasers. So um, that mold shop I was talking about, we have hard rubbers that we mold for our stunts. So as a way to try and help, I've actually molded some extra hard phasers to be able to give out.
Oh,
So then
good.
at least it's still an exact approximation of the prop, but it's not the real metal one. So then we can hopefully save those for a future day, um, at least for now, anyways.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Cam, you got,
I'm just trying to think if there's any season 3 specific.
I mean, I think it's been discussed, but the whip, I know you brought it up earlier.
Mhm.
I was curious. I mean, it's a very cool whip.
Yes.
Hmm. The thing about the whip is interesting because, again, it tied into how the costume would function
Hmm.
as
Mm.
well as a practical prop. I actually, until I came to Strange New Worlds, never knew that the sash that Klingons wore was actually called the baldric,
Mm.
Oh, okay.
which is Bernadette told me that that's the official name is a baldric, and I was like, very good. Um, and because what we saw with Worf and having the baldric, we wanted to have that as well with Bytha. But the biggest part about that is we wanted it to actually be her whip,
Hmm.
Hmm.
and that it wanted to kind of sit flat. So part of the discussion was how could we make it specifically the elements of the teeth and all of the different spines for costumes to then assemble into just having the baldric that wasn't the whip, but we would still have the handle and the connection part of it, but it would be two different things.
Oh, okay.
And then the other conversation was the space that we were shooting in the AR wall, of like the unraveling it. And, were we going to practically do that? And we actually had several meetings of whether it was worthwhile having a practical unwrap, or was it better to do it on green, which ultimately does make me sad because we never got to make the full whip. We got to make the handle. We got to design all of the teeth. We got to design what it would look like. We got to make the end blade and her house emblem so that later on she could tear it off to throw. But we never actually got to make the full whip because
dang.
space for the actual stunt, and B, for visual effects, they were like, if we saw any practical movement, they would have to then match to it in post. And they were concerned that it wouldn't do what they wanted it to do and would actually cause issue. So in the end, we only got to make the handle. But we got to do all the design process of, we got to make the blade for it, which was really great. And we got to design what the teeth looked like and talked about what those were so that costumes could make the baldric for that. But we never got to make the full whip, which, I think lets a lot of people down, including myself, because it was just like not possible.
Dang.
Yeah.
Gotta
That's
make
too
some
bad.
compromises.
Yeah.
But yeah, what about the Final Frontier? Was there prop work done for that? And if so, was it easier or harder making cheap-looking 60s props?
It's kind of funny. I talked to Bernadette about this. I designed the badges that they
Okay.
wore, and did all the concepts. And then Bernadette actually, because usually we'll make like a hard badge, like everything is metal. But given into the cheesiness of The Last Frontier, she was like, let's make them an actual patch. So with that being said, she was like, I'll take this on. And then when we were doing The Last Frontier, we were still in the throes of getting ready for episode 5. And when she brought up the phasers to me on their outfits, which look phenomenal, the costumes department came up with them
Okay.
and did them. Um, and in hindsight, I am like shaking my head. And I even said to her, I'm like, I'm so sorry. I should have done those. Those looked phenomenal. I was in the weeds at the time, and I just couldn't like change focus from getting everything from 305 ready.
Ah.
So when she brought them up, I was like, I can't. I said I couldn't do them because I just didn't have the time. But what she did was great and definitely like heightened the look of it so much more that I'm like kind of hanging my head in shame, being like, I should have found the time to do that. But at the time, I just felt a little overwhelmed.
Well, and 3 or 4 in its own right is basically 3 different time periods of art direction for everyone. So yeah, sure, it was a lot.
A lot going on, yeah. And
Yeah.
305, you had stuff like the Vesda orbs and things like that. Those are really cool props.
Yeah. So the thing is, like, I guess a lot of people don't know is like, if we're shooting like 304, I'm prepping like 305, 306, 307. Like, I'm
Okay.
always at least like 2 episodes ahead because our shoot days are like 9 days. I can't usually build something in that time. So I have to like work ahead. So at that time, I was really working on 305, because, like you say, the Vesda orb and like the alien bag, that didn't want to be an alien bag, wanted to look like a piece of tech. And then they gave me carte blanche of what to put in that bag.
Oh, fun.
Ah.
I'm now trying to remember what's in it.
So we actually created and sized it to the dead aliens, though it never would have been worn. Was we did a bone respirator that
Oh,
had like
okay.
inset nodules to say that this was a way that they could breathe and function. Um, and again, we sized it to the dead aliens that were on the floor. We never see it on their face, but we made sure that it would look the size and fit. We also did a really cool little like piece of tech that we wanted to say was like an alien compass, and we made sure that there were like ley lines and sound lines on it, because if this had been a hero prop, we would have probably had it like actually light up and like move.
Oh, okay.
And we like matched lines on that piece of tech to like what we would see on the outside of the bag too, because again, the bag didn't want to be a bag. They wanted it to be kind of ominous, like, is it a bag? Is it this? So yeah, we had our hands full, but it was honestly like I loved doing that episode because we were working with Jonathan Lee and art department to like inset our tablet and our ring into the actual set piece, as well as like how our orbs came into what we saw in the graphics. And then also same thing. My favorite prop of that episode was actually the relic that the tablet and the ring morphed into, is
Oh, okay.
because the whole idea of the beholder with all the crystallines was that, it was like suspended time and suspended space. So the whole idea of being able to be like the two temporal timelines that then got smushed into one, I liked the idea of using the crystals to look like they almost were meeting in an hourglass shape to kind of
Hmm.
make that reference of like stilled time. Yeah, I
That's
don't know.
very cool.
I just,
No, that's cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you got to make a device that blasted someone's eyes out and probably took you back to your SAW days. Just to bookend everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I'm not that violent, I promise. Just when I'm mad, Somehow people don't like very short women who are upset. They back away slowly. Don't know why.
You never know when they have a 40-foot storage trailer full of, all kinds of fake weapons and stuff like that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you got to be careful. Yeah.
Yeah, we know how to wield them too.
Exactly. Well, Emily, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And it was so much fun meeting you and just seeing the excitement and passion you have for your work there at CBS and
Yes.
on Strange
Thank you.
Worlds. Yeah.
Thank you for stretching your budget. Thank you for always pushing things to greatness.
Yes.
It
Yes.
is
Thank you.
appreciated from those of us on the other side of the screen.
Absolutely.
Well, and thank you for your kindness and understanding that sometimes we push to the moon and other times, we make a Spock and spell.
Yay!
Heck yeah.
Well, we hope to have you back on after season 4
Thank
and 5
Yes.
as well. We know you have some props from those you're super proud of.
Oh, man.
Oh yeah, I
Speaking
can't wait.
of which,
Yeah.
Yes.
now is the time, if you're willing to give us a one-word tease for season 4, something that will not spoil the season for people listening, but will give them something to look for when they watch it.
I think we can say photon torpedo.
Oh,
John and I
excellent.
may know a little bit about that one, and I think that's a
Little
good
bit.
choice for you.
I think it's a perfect choice. Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much, Emily. And yeah, we can't wait to talk to you again. We hope you have a great wrap to filming of Strange New Worlds.
Thank you so much, guys.